We have chat, which represents the entire right portion of the screen. Then we have the chat header. Next, we need the list of actual messages. So I smell a new component called MessageList. No problem. Let's make a new component in our source folder. Capital M message, capital L list.js. This is probably not going to have state of its own. State is not the only thing that determines whether you can use a functional, stateless functional component, but it is the one that we know about. For right now, it's fine. Let's make it a stateless functional component. Get some practice at that. Let's just import React from React, not component. And let's make const MessageList equals an arrow function instead of making class MessageList extends component. Don't need a render method. Our entire component is a function, and so it just needs to return some JSX. And once again, I'll just make a div with a class name of MessageList. And don't forget to export default MessageList. So even before I put anything else in there, just so we don't forget to do it, I'll go ahead and go into my chat component. And import it. So in addition to importing chat header, I will import MessageList from /MessageList. And I'll put it right and after chat header. Yeah.
So is it conventional to like make a new JavaScript file for pretty much every like component?
Yeah. Yep. Nice thing is it makes it all very self-contained. Chunk it up, move it around, twist it. I don't know, that doesn't make any sense, but. All right, so we've got that. Now there's nothing in MessageList just yet. What are we going to have in there? Going to have a bunch of messages, right? So what we can do for now, ultimately, I think the messages will be stored in state somewhere. But for right now, just so we can kind of build the body of this thing out a little bit more, I'm just going to put a variable inside MessageList called messages, const messages. We'll just make that an array of little objects. So each message, each message will have an ID, some sort of unique identifier. Let's make it a number for right now. It'll have a user associated with it. I'll just put username. And it'll have a message body. I don't know. Maybe it'll have more stuff later. This is fine for now. Chatting up a storm, yo. Comma. Have another message. ID 2, username, D Palazzo, that's her, body, this guy is so annoying, I hate my job. I like my trailing commas. So ultimately this is going to be in state somewhere, but for right now, this is fine. I just wanted to be able to map over it. So we used the trick that we used in Reactor Bats and that some of you used in your Dwarf Underground project last night. So what I could do is something like this. Messages.map. So the argument to this arrow function will be, or to my callback, which happens to be an arrow function, will be each individual message. I will call it MSG just so because otherwise the word message is going to appear an awful lot of times in this line. So MSG, not monosodium glutamate, but message. And what do we want? I could temporarily just put like a paragraph here with the message, with the, let's put the msg.username colon msg.body or something just to get it to show up on the page. Let's see how that looks. Here we go. Chatting up a storm, yo. This guy's so annoying, I hate my job. Here we go. It works. So that's how we use map, right? So arrow functions, if they are one-liners, there's only one statement in the whole arrow function that will automatically be the return value. You don't actually need the word return. So this is really this. But we don't have to say that. In fact, if we said that, we would have to put the curly braces in. So we don't need the curly braces. We don't need the word return. We don't need parentheses around MSG because there's only one argument. If there were 0 arguments, the parentheses would not be optional. But since there's 1, optional. If there were 2, would not be optional. You need parentheses. But it kind of seems like the message itself should be a separate component, right? Each individual message. So let's do that too while we're at it. Capital M message.js. I think this can also be a stateless functional component, so we'll just import React from React. Const message equals an arrow function, which will return some JSX. I'll return a div with a class name of capital M message. And I will export default message. I will, of course, import that back in MessageList. I like to leave a blank line between my node modules and the ones we're importing from our own files. So import message from /message, made possible by the fact that we export it here. We would not have to call it the same thing here if we didn't want to. It is the default export for here, so whatever we import from there will be that, unless we put curly braces around it. So instead of just putting out a paragraph here, what I want to do is actually render this component for each one of these messages. So this line's going to get a little long to fit on the screen here, so what I'm going to do is actually put some parentheses here and put my JSX on the next line. Parentheses make this still technically a one-liner arrow function, so I still don't need return. I just need to put my JSX here. So now I will put a message component, which right now has nothing in it. So the message needs some data from the outside, doesn't it? It needs information about the message that we're actually rendering right now. So to get data from outside a component into a component, we use, that's right, props. So in a stateless functional component, the props just get passed in as an argument to the function. In a class, they're available as this.props. But inside a stateless functional component, they are just the argument to the component. So I'll probably have a prop called message or something, right? That seems reasonable. So we'll just put props.username colon props dot, I'm sorry, probably be props.message, right? Props.message.username and props.message.body. Make sense? So now if we need to change the way that messages display, and I bet we will, they're going to get more complicated than this. We only have to mess with this component in the future. As long as that message gets in there's props.message, we can just change this component and not have to worry about that. So we need to make sure we pass that prop down, right? So to pass a prop into a component, you use what look like HTML attributes. So we have a prop called message. And if it were just a string, we could always put quotes, but it's not. It's an object. So you can put any JavaScript expression you want as long as it returns something inside curly braces, and that will be the value of the prop. Okay, we're not quite done yet, so hold on a sec. So I'll put MSG in here. So we're passing the current message, right? We have the array of messages. We're mapping over it. We get a single message called MSG. We pass that on as a prop to message. I'm going to indent this slightly differently. Yeah.
Won't it just be props.username and not props.message?
Yep. No, because my prop is actually called message, right? Message equals MSG. So the only prop I have is called message. And then, so that'll be each one of these, right? So that is an object that has a username and an object that has body. So I'm passing this entire object as the prop message. So props.message will have a username, body, and an ID. I'm not passing the individual properties of this object, passing in the entire message. Make sense? First of all, let's see if this worked. Okay, I still see these here, so it must have. So let's, I do have one little warning here. Each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. Check the render method of MessageList. See this link for more. Let's see the link. Sometimes React's error messages are really good like this, and they actually give you a link to the docs. Keys help React identify which items have changed, are added, or are removed. Keys should be given to the elements inside the array to give the elements a stable identity. And it shows us an example. Okay, we're mapping over a simple array here. And for each li it puts out, it adds a prop called key that uniquely identifies each one. So anytime you use map over an array in React, whatever you render here should have a prop called key. And it should be something that uniquely identifies each record, because React uses this so that it doesn't have to redraw the entire list if something changes. It only redraws the one that actually changed, which, depending on the complexity of that thing, could actually save quite a bit of trouble. And by trouble, I mean performance. So I'll add a key prop, and I'll just set it to msg.id. Right? We've got an ID on each one of these that uniquely identifies it. So we'll add a key prop here. Again, that link is right there if you get that error. But here's that link in Slack. So it's just something we need to remember to do. I save this, and the warning goes away. So look at my React DevTools, and let's just have a look at this set of components here. Let's look at message. Remember, you can search inside the React DevTools to find the component you're looking for. Here we go. I've got two of these, right? I've got two instances of this message component. I see the props. I have one prop. It is called message, and it has a body, an ID, and a username. The other message also has a single prop called message. It also has a key, right? Because we passed that in. So the key prop is special. It doesn't actually show up as one of your normal props. Get it? Right. Let's add. This is our first message, our first component that receives a prop. Add a message component that receives a prop. Add message list. I'll say, and a message component that receives a prop. Questions about the concepts we're putting in here? This is our most complicated thing so far. I'll leave this up here for a sec.